Hi there, this is Yana the Heretic, and this is my channel, The Unpopular Opinion Becoming Popular. And today I'm going to talk about the I Ching Gate 22. This is called the Gate of Openness and Grace. This gate is in the emotional center. It is filtering through March 7th to the 12th. It is part of the knowing circuit, and it is an individual gate under the Godhead Mitra, which is the guardian of honesty, friendship, and covenants. It is a Rigveda or Indo-Iranian deity, a solar deity, which has the aspect of shining the light on things or being the light in those areas, which is like a light bulb shining. It's a light bulb going off between interactions with people, because you're like, how do we figure this out? How do we figure these emotions out, or what's actually going on? And to start with the pros, these people are the musicians, and they're the connoisseurs of frequency hunting, and the ones that register sound from a very individual perspective. They can use it to heal with frequency healing, express richness in full dimension like an opera. They're really here to experience all of the sound and like putting it into words and being able to use sound to be their words. This is matrixing through the voices that fly by. And this skill aids in their survivability. If you hear something that doesn't feel like you want to hear it, this gate isn't going to hear it. This is balancing on the axis of sovereignty, is the cross of rulership. And no one, not just anyone, can penetrate these people or their focus or deciding factors for them. It really requires something of their taste and their respect. So this is called the gate of deafness as well, because these people can just blatantly not listen to you at all. This is in the knowing circuit, so the actual key terms of this gate is acoustics and hearing, and it's about having a unique knowing and hearing from the lens of your emotions. So somebody could say, I hate you, and this becomes a challenge and not an insult. You're just like, whatever, you can hate me. Or if you're really under sea level, below sea level with your emotions, somebody saying you're pretty can start a bitch fit. So it's all about emotional expression, the pure form of creation in music. These people sense emotions in the room within the mass frequencies of sounds just reverberating around the room. If they're truly listening to your stories and your wonders, then that it's a huge compliment that you are part of the insider club, because they definitely don't listen to just anybody. All that you're hearing, if you're riding on a high, feels like honey to your ears. The music is just right. The song comes on the radio that's your favorite, stuff like that, just universally coming in and sparking an emotional rise that's happy. It's definitely an emotional gate that if you're feeling super low, you do not want to go out. You want your personal time alone. Because when you're grumpy, you're going to react poorly to what you hear, no matter what. It's just going to be sour, bitter, not like kind in any means at all. So, you know, and if you have a 22 in your household, definitely give them the space that they need. You know, don't just like completely pester them and annoy them when they need space, because you're going to hear something super mean and it's going to hurt your freaking ego, because these people know just how to hit that tone to where you're like triggered. So why would you inflict that upon them and then on yourself? Yeah, the deafness default is simple for them to do. It's so easy for them to be deaf. They don't even realize it's going on. But others are deeply offended by, you know, this without their recollection. It's just not worth hearing everyone. Their tone of voice offends you. It makes you want to barf. You know, you just like find voices and find like acoustics that really make you need to leave the room. This is almost, you know, I don't know if this is linked necessarily to the autism spectrum of, you know, how kids like feel chaotic in certain home spaces, and then you take them into another space and they feel like, wow, you know, like everything is calm, you know, for them, and they really enjoy this environment that they're in. And you, if you know anyone on the spectrum, they typically like have a very deep connection to sound. And they like to create sound, you know, and sometimes like you get a lot of sounds from them that are like, holy shit, like you want to crash these pots all the time, you know. But these people are always thinking, you know, who has anything to say that I'm willing to hear? You know, there's definitely a lot of people that are constantly talking nonsense to them or just boring them to death, or, you know, they just have a lot of emotional links to how they feel with sounds, right? So, but there's also people that, you know, they have this magnetic draw to certain people's voices, and they're like, wow, this is so eerily familiar, you know, and it's like as almost this person is like plucking my heartstrings, like it's coming from me, like everything they're saying and the way that they're saying it, they feel so like it feels so familiar. I'm forgetting the word, but it's like this deep connection to this person because of how they're saying what they're saying, you know, and obviously they're probably in a high mood at that time. So it may sound really good, you know, to them that one time, but the next time they hear it, they may not really like it. You know, that happens with songs a lot. You're like, what was I even thinking, like, listening to this song? I don't know where I was, like, totally, like, not me, you know? They feel like their power is matched with acoustics. So if they like certain sound and a voice, they're like, yeah, like my ultimate power is matched, and it's a cyclical thing. Energetically, it's a really soothing experience to find somebody that is on your level, that makes you feel accepted, that hears you, you know, and appreciates what you have to say. I have also like personally dated, you know, people in my life that listen to metal and listen to music that I like, or even like want to do sound healing immersive events with me, because, you know, I just feel so connected to sound personally. And the person that I'm dating, like, if you like certain types of music, I'm like, yeah, like, I don't know about you, you know? And that's how most people connect, right? It's like a genre specific thing. And I am not really mutable in that way. Like, I must have these things because then it's easier for me to relate to people because we're on the same frequency and we enjoy the same frequency, or we enjoy the same rhythm and beat and type of drumming or humming or chanting or, riffs. All of those things really, really matter. A lot of Gate 22s, they resort to listening to what someone in power has to say, or somebody that is beautiful. So it could be a little bit, also forgetting the word. It's a little bit like, oh, well, I'm going to listen to this person because they know what they're doing. They're obviously making moves in life. There's no one else here that's doing that, so why would I listen to them? So it's pretty surface level is what I'm getting at, if they have no one else to listen to, that's interesting. Because they're wanting to really learn something. That's generally why. If there's no one interesting them for any other reason, then it's gonna go to that stage of the conversation. Regardless who you are, a lot of the time you have to say like the same thing over and over again to these people because they tune out. Like, it's just something that happens. They won't even register it happening. And it's hard to not get offended by that, but the way that they learn is generally through frequency. And they like, this is the kid that's at school that's like, holy fuck, this teacher is like so monotonous. Like, I would rather hear like chalk and nails, or nails on a chalkboard, and like, I just can't. I need to get out of here. This is the restless kid in the room that's like, wow, like, give me something to play with. Give me something to make noise with. And, give me like some type of maybe stimulating study music or something so that I can actually get my homework done. Otherwise it's just the silence and like people breathing and like, you start to get these really sensory aspects that really like confuse and conflict your focus. And how would you even retain the information if you have somebody like that's so boring, teaching you? And that is why these types of kids, they gravitate more towards choir or, band, because they understand that language. They're capable of actually speaking in that language. And they're typically not so great at actual study work and actual homework because they're like, yeah, like, let me do, all of it in this one facet and play music all day. Like, why can't I do that all day? It's easier to register the senses through music. The familiarity of sound resonance will attract them to the things they really enjoy. As an individual gate, standing on its own without gate 12, the polar gate, there's a pressure to express feelings, but it's really challenging because they speak through music in a lot of ways and frequency. It's really hard for them to actually like express how they're feeling because their feelings are so directly linked to sound. And a lot of the time the disgrace happens, where I was mentioning earlier that if you're in a bad mood, stay home. It's like this person like abruptly yelling and leaving, or just, if I have to sit in this room again, I will scream. If like this certain thing happens again, like I must like leave. So it tends to burn down your entire surroundings, right? Because like you say the thing, you regret it deeply, and you're like, holy shit, like I couldn't handle it anymore. So I feel a lot of guilt in that way because I just kind of blew up my life here. So, it's challenging. It's challenging to have like this pressure of feelings, but not knowing how or when to express them, you know, in a safe manner. So the grace has to come in. So, you know, they won't like burn down their surroundings. And that usually is just coming back to the situation and apologizing and taking accountability for the things that you know, said wrong or, you know, perceived wrong, and like, sorry, I was just really in a bad mood that day and I couldn't handle all of these frequencies flying around. And I know that that's a very new language, and that's the correct response, because a lot of the time when people burn down their surroundings, they don't come back. You know, they feel too embarrassed, right? You're like, I just yelled at my entire class. Like, what do I do? Like, I just yelled at my boss and like I couldn't handle, you know, any more of this. So like they're too ashamed to come back, and the way to handle it is to create this new language and be like, hey, like I'm really like sensitive to sound, and sensory experiences really affect me deeply. And it doesn't have to be, you know, oh, I'm on the spectrum. Like, you don't even have to tell them that. You just be like, hey, like I perceive sound and I'm very sensitive to sound. And sometimes I'm just not capable of like taking in this information. And I apologize for that. Oh, you said that to me a million times. I apologize. I'm listening now. I'm here with you. And I want to make sure that you understand me so that you don't feel like I'm completely tuning you out every time and just talking about myself. So the polarizing gate 12 helps stop time so that these folks can say exactly the right words in the right moment that can actually impact generations. You know, they sing the right song at the monumental moment, you know, and then they're like, wow, that whole song made this, you know, death ritual beautiful, or, you know, I really felt the soul. And, oh, like, we're grieving because, like, this is the end of the war, and somebody sings this song that's for the people and for peace. And then everyone's just like feeling it, and they're gonna remember this song, because we remember songs much easier than we remember text and even lyrics. Like, a lot of people won't even know the lyrics to a song, and then they find out and they're like, oh my god, like I've been like sharing this music with my kid, or like, you know, and the lyrics are so like way inappropriate. So, you know, it's more so that our body a lot of the time registers the actual music rather than the thought or intention behind it. So unfortunately, the channel of openness was not active. This transit is called the design of a social being, 22 or 2212. So this is another link from the emotional center to the throat center. This is what is possible for these emotional gates to actually come out and like really impact people with creativity and with emotional depth, you know, and like really like shining a light of like, wait, but like this is actually happening. Could you imagine? This is like such a hard process for somebody to go through, you know, and it like really sheds perspective upon people. You know, when you listen to something monumental like music, you're like, wow, I'm like really emotional about this, and I really understand the picture. And frequency is a code. It's encoded in our history, in our, you know, ancient temples, and the way that they actually have mystical hollowness to create a resonance with all the rest of the stones, like the Stonehenge. And music and frequency is actual data. So it's actually a faster way to communicate. And this is the potential of this gate, is to really hit the mark and like be able to, you know, perhaps in the future communication will change very, very much so. And these are the ones that are going to master how that changes. And yeah. So, since this was not in transit, the channel of openness, there might have been some assumptions made. The nature of our conversations, you know, may not have been super stable. The time frame also can contain a pretty deep emotional detox, since Jupiter stationed direct after 4 months in retrograde in the sign of Cancer, cardinal water. So that means our like beliefs were being dissected, and removing the lead of the lie, you know, removing the lie that makes us have beef with others. So these are all the assumptions that we've collected, all this dammed up emotions that, you know, of, I don't want to forgive that person. We were finally like washing the path before us clean so that we can like forgive people and look at things differently and let go. So everyone knows where they stand in like forgiveness, and everyone knows where they stand with their boundaries. And like, let's start anew, because I'm ready to like make this bond again and try again, you know, and forgive, because like that's really how you get through things, is by taking accountability and being like, hey, I want to do this differently with you, you know, like these are my boundaries. So make it so that this flow isn't trapped again. And yeah, the channel of community was in transit, 4037. The channel of emoting was in transit. The design of moodiness, 3955. The channel of inspiration, 18, was in transit, which is the design of the creative role model. So there's a lot of creation going on. And I hope that you made something really potent in this transit and understood something about yourself and frequency. The questions of the week are: what emotions did you feel pressured to release this transit? How much of what you hear actually affects you day to day? Example: advertisements all day playing in the background versus, you know, having birds chirping outside in the outdoors, you know, or the sound of the wind versus putting on your favorite record. What did those like sounds actually make you feel? How does hearing aid you in staying away from danger? You know, I definitely have been in that spectrum where it's like, yeah, like if that person is talking, like I don't, you know, like this entire person is not good for me, you know, and that's like, you know, probably negatively seen as judgment, but like that is actually something that you should focus on that can save you a lot of the time. What sounds soothe your nervous system? Your vagus nerve? How often do you listen too much or listen too little? So listening too much would be like overthinking what people say, you know, or just being a really awesome listener to people. And then too little obviously speaks for itself, like not listening at all or not being able to listen to anything because you just need silence. So I hope that I broke this down for you guys, and I will see you in the next gate. Thank you.